Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of WVD Monthly. As I'm saying that, I realize we probably got to change the name to AVD Monthly. I'll probably ride the WVD wave a little longer, though. I've got Bill Sutton with me, Bill, Director of Services at XenTegra. Bill, is it me or has it been a few weeks since you've been on a podcast?
It has been a few weeks, mostly because of timing and also a little bit of time off.
Bill, that's your real office in the background, right?
Yeah, kind of. I'm in the room over the garage. So
That's as messy as I've ever seen it.
yeah, trying to reorganize some things. So
My oldest two kids went off to college last week, and we had all their stuff in the garage. My wife and I were so excited Saturday morning to declutter, purge. My garage looks beautiful again. It won't last long, but I'm so happy when I open the door now.
yeah, this is I would call this cluttered too. I wouldn't call it messy per se, but potato.
Yeah. I see you got the fan circulating in the background. Is it a million degrees there, or is it cooler today?
We just had a thunderstorm come through and it's cooled things off a little bit, but this room doesn't get as much of the AC because it's over the garage. So I have to run the fan to keep me cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about maybe the tropical storm or whatever is coming up this way. It's been like raining here all day and night. It's interesting. We're only 250 miles south of you.
Yeah, it's a lot of storms we've had over the course of the past couple of days, and I just found out. I guess last week I've got a roof leak, so I'm trying to get a contractor in here to look at my section of my attic that's got a small leak in it. So.
I think that's an interesting topic because kind of what I want to talk to you guys about is desktops as a service from the cloud, and I've got a house, right, and I walk around it this weekend looking at all the stuff that needs to be done, and one thing I can think of is condo.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we got Jon Spallone with us. Jon, this is your first time joining this podcast, our WVD Monthly. I guess give this group of listeners a little background on yourself, specifically as it relates to your desktop app virtualization and specifically maybe the Microsoft Azure story.
Sure thing. Hello, everybody, and thanks for having me. And basically what it breaks down to is I've been in the EUC world for multiple of years, so we're not going to date ourselves this time. So I've worked with Citrix, worked with Microsoft, VMware. I've worked with the Citrix Cloud and the Azure solutions, like you mentioned earlier, the WVD. Then now that we're at AVD, I worked at Cloud Jumper for a while, where we actually worked with enhancements within WVD, giving better capabilities to customers, administrators on environment deployments within the WVD world. So yeah, I've got some experience in the EUC world of things as it comes to cloud-hosted solutions and on-prem traditional deployments.
One of the things I want to talk to you about, Jon, is help us gauge where the Microsoft platform, the brokering platform, in other words, AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop, versus Citrix Cloud versus Cloud Jumper. What percentage of the Citrix Cloud capabilities and feature would you say, standard Windows, Microsoft AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop platform, brokering platform, how close are they?
So from my perspective, when we're looking at an AVD environment, really it's the native environment. It's native. It's everything that's Microsoft. It's built within Microsoft's cloud, so they're optimizing within their infrastructure. When you start talking about putting the Citrix piece into it, now we're leveling up and taking a layer out of this and doing more enhancements. So, I mean, Citrix been around forever. And when we look at how it was back in the day, really it was, you could use Terminal Server in Microsoft and deliver what you needed to, and it got you there. It did things for you, but it wasn't the complete solution. Citrix added into it, took you above and beyond, and gave you a little bit more. So it's the same thing with the AVD, WVD. You can get there with that delivery. There was with Cloud Jumper, which is been purchased. They were acquired out there. So that was an enhancement from an administrative standpoint, which gave you more customization and capabilities from a command line and also an interface standpoint to be able to do some of those native things that were heavy lifting if you didn't really know where you were looking. So it was optimized and helped you by doing the scripts that you didn't have to figure out how to do it yourself. And then Citrix now taking it up on top of it, you get the added benefit and features and capabilities and enhancements that Citrix offers even within an AVD environment today, just with AVD or with Citrix's complete Citrix cloud solution. So I really do feel like there is a use case where AVD is a solution for majority of the customers that are out there.
Hey, Bill, I think you spent too much time as a consultant. I don't think you answered the question.
Oh, I didn't?
No, I mean, can you put a number on it? Let's talk cloud workloads only. Would you say they're 50% on par with, say, a Citrix? They're 80% on par, 30%? And
okay, so
workloads.
From a workload standpoint, I would say they're
cloud workloads.
Cloud workloads. Okay, from the endpoint approach.
Well, in a situation where all my my hosting, my brokering, everything's happening in the cloud, whether it's Citrix front-ending it or CloudJumper front-ending it or native, I would call it maybe naked AVD. How close are they to be able to deliver a like-for-like type of experience?
Out of the box, I would say about 85, 90%
okay.
to a Citrix side of the house, out of the box.
Bill, does that shock you, the number he used?
It does shock me. I would have said more like 50 or 60. If you had asked me this question a year ago, I probably would have said 30 or 40.
Yeah.
Microsoft has really upped the game, so to speak, by moving things up the stack, optimizing teams, providing the ability to use master images more seamlessly. Now they're adding Azure Active Directory domain join, which is something I don't know that Citrix is supporting yet fully.
Yeah.
Obviously the optimization for teams. So they've upped the game, but I don't know that I'd go quite as high as John. Yeah. I'd probably be more around the 60% range.
But I think both of you would agree they're definitely doing things like we're going to talk about here in a minute that's catching up.
Yes.
And it's a lot easier to catch up than it is to have to go out and invent net new.
Correct. Yeah. And when I just real quick to back to the numbers, I agree with Bill from a standpoint, but there's also that administrative level where there's a lot of customization you can do within scripting that can get you there. So from a cloud management position, you can get not a like for like, but you can get there a lot closer.
So, John, you were probably thinking, bolt on CloudJumper or be a really sharp PowerShell guy. You can overcome that 60 where Bill's at and get you up more in the 80 or 90% range using the framework that's there.
Correct.
Now, I want to throw this one in the mix. What about if I need on-premises workloads because, my client server apps aren't all in the cloud or I have requirements, governance type requirements. Now, what does that number turn into, John?
Oh, that's that's where I fall into like Bill's numbers for a Citrix environment over AVD.
Yeah. John, do you know anything about Azure Stack Hub and where the ability to extend Azure into your own premises data center stands?
Not enough that I feel comfortable about, but yes, I am aware of it.
Do you think that's something Microsoft's serious about doing?
I don't. I think they're serious enough of offering it out there because there are solutions out there that they can go up against with their own sauce, as it was in their solution. But I don't see them going, tit for tat with solutions that are out there. I think it's going to be an offering, and that's about it.
Yeah. Bill, do you know anything about any thoughts on the on-premises side of how Azure either can't go there or will go there?
I remember more than 3 years ago, they released the first Azure Stack package with a couple of large hardware vendors. I don't really know if it's how much farther it's come since then, to be honest with you. I don't know that it's it's utilized very much. But to be honest, it was really about bringing a subset of what's in the cloud into an on-premises world. But I don't know that it's really resonated that much, except maybe with the largest of the large organizations.
It's my understanding that it's currently at a workload by workload basis. So maybe SQL is one where you can do it, but desktop virtualization is not there, or may not ever be there, or maybe it's a year or so away. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a question for Rob, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Rob and I talked about it recently. I think it's something that Microsoft is thinking about doing, and we as a group, keep an eye on that, because if they ever do, all of a sudden Azure becomes Azure, AVD. They all of a sudden becomes a whole nother player there, where I can put workloads and colos and in my own data center, and all of a sudden some of those challenges go away. All right. Well, the purpose of this podcast is to go over the updates each month, and we actually skipped one. I think we're in July at this point, and we were talking about this briefly. So let's kind of walk through what I've got on the screen here, which are the updates for July 2021 to Azure Virtual Desktop. I think we covered it a podcast or two ago, but it's got a new name, Azure Virtual Desktop, not WVD. It sounds like Azure Virtual Desktop was actually the original name, and now that they're going to be hosting Linux workloads, they definitely needed to decouple from the Windows naming convention. So Azure Virtual Desktop, and the first thing it talks about here is something that Bill pointed out is really important. Azure Active Directory domain join for session host is in public preview. Bill, is that? Well, I've already gone to number 2. We'll come back to number 1. But on this topic, Bill, is this something that we as a group kind of run into some?
A very little bit, yes. We've run into it very little, where primarily where the customer wanted to leverage Microsoft Endpoint Manager, which can leverage Azure AD domain join, and then allow you to enroll the VMs into Endpoint Manager and manage it from there. So I think this is probably, my personal view is this is the first step towards getting a true Active Directory in the cloud, rather than what we, it's not to say that what we have today isn't. It's just not the same as the traditional Active Directory that we require for in particular, a Citrix environment, but they're giving AVD the ability to use that as the domain source, as it were, for their machines for basic credentials.
So does this mean the VDI would be joined to a domain that is actually hosted in Azure?
I believe so, yes.
And that would be the same domain where the user is going to be also a member of?
Yes.
Okay. John, any thoughts on this one? Have you run into this in your travels?
No, I just really think it's taking it to another level that's going to help out deployments.
Definitely cuts out the kludginess of it's in AD. Well, not that AD. It's in the other AD.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then the whole AD connect that's required to keep the two in sync, and the password hashes and all the other complexity that exists there today.
Bill, does this eliminate the problem we had a couple times in the past where users didn't have a seamless login and they would have to be re-authenticated along the way?
I don't know that they've gotten that far with it yet. I know that there is some capability in Azure Virtual Desktop or AVD to enable single sign-on, but I don't know that that's leveraging this yet. Okay. I know that from a Citrix perspective, we still need, the traditional Azure AD, the AD Connect configuration, syncing things properly, or you need a FAS server, depending on what you're leveraging for identity.
And is a lot of this just the fact that people have so many legacy Active Directory environments on site that just they just can't, we can't just put all this new stuff in the new Azure AD and be done?
I think that's probably part of it, yes.
Yeah.
I think it also offers a bridge, whereas, before what we looked at, it's either you're syncing or you're going in the cloud,
right,
for your AD. So this is allowing for that bridge for both developers and for customers to be able to integrate with AD in their solutions. So
we skipped the first one, which is the Azure Virtual Desktop images now include optimized teams. Does that mean that the images that were running in the AVD environment automatically know what to do with a Teams connection that's coming from another system running Teams?
I believe that's what it means. It essentially, I think what this is when you install Teams into a virtual desktop master image, there's a certain way you're supposed to do it, machine only install and things like that. Some optimizations that need to be done properly to make it run. I think they're essentially what they're doing is including that in those images that include Microsoft 365, and it's already optimized. You don't have to go through all the steps. So they're taking a layer of one of the steps you would do to optimize it out of the requirements.
You guys can see me searching here frantically. I was going to ask if Zoom has the offline, because obviously Teams is being widely used. We're mostly using it as XenTegra, but at the moment we're on a Zoom session because that's how we record our webinars. Any idea of Zoom optimizations happening in Teams and in AVD as well?
My guess is you would install the Zoom plugin for VDI, just like you would in the Citrix or VMware environment, into your master image, and then that would just do what it does in VDI. I think what they're talking about here is when you install the Windows 10 multi-session image with the apps, it includes the optimized app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just jumped out here and looked. It looks like there is some documentation on doing this for WVD for Zoom. It just struck me as I was going through that. I had never thought about what they were doing, and I'm sure that's Zoom doing for them, not them doing for Zoom.
Yeah.
So, John, I know you just came over from the world of WVD, AVD, a lot of things there. Have you had a lot of customers that were, needing this feature, this Teams feature?
So it was small and few in between. I really think the pandemic is what pushed this initiative to the forefront of everything. I know initially, these were things that were wanted and needed in there and that were progressing along. It just required more heavy lifting within that VM that you had to build out to begin with. So now it's definitely optimizing it more up front. So there's less hands-on work you got to do. But I do want to note that in the breakdown of the article here is that this is, as typical with Azure, is on the commercial side of the cloud at this time and not yet supported within the DoD 365.
Okay. Yeah, I know you have a big background in government-related stuff, so it is important to point that out. I just had a thought. That Citrix guy historically, how awesome it would have been for Citrix back in the day if they still owned GoToMeeting, or when they owned GoToMeeting, and if the pandemic would have happened then, and that would have been a massive success for those guys.
Oh yeah.
Whatever happened to that? That's LogMeIn or something now, right?
Yeah, LogMeIn acquired them.
Yep.
And did the meeting side of it just kind of dry up?
I think it integrated in within the LogMeIn solution stack.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. What's a better name for a meeting online platform? GoToMeeting or Zoom?
Yeah.
They would have been sitting beautifully. Oh, well. Live and learn. Lost. All right. FSLogix version 2105. I don't know what this covers. I don't know if you guys read into the text on this one, but anything specific to call out on this latest version of FSLogix?
I think they're just including the latest version, and I think that some of the improvements that were made in that version are primarily around improving login times or sign-in times, where it attaches the VHD, and then bug fixes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and as you guys know, login times are uber importance in what we do.
If the user's not happy, nobody's happy.
So this next one talks about Azure Virtual Desktop in China. That's one heading here and one or two sentences. That's a big deal. And what that means for organizations in China, this is big, really.
Yep, I would agree. That's a huge pool of potential users.
And what does that mean for maybe people in China that have worked for corporations that provided a virtual desktop outside of China for various reasons? Does this now mean that they won't be doing that anymore? They'll crack down that harder, and now all of a sudden is this a good or bad thing for industry in China?
I think that's an open question. I don't know that I could answer that. I would think it's kind of a double-edged sword. I think it's a good thing in the sense that perhaps if there are, native Chinese companies that need to provide virtual desktops, obviously that will be good for them. I don't know how it'll impact Chinese subsidiaries of U.S. companies or European companies outside of China, because you still got to hop through the edge to get out and in.
You mean the Chinese firewall?
Exactly.
John, any experience dealing with customers out of that region?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing from a standpoint of bringing VDI to the Chinese market and the Chinese industry that's out there, being able to build out. And again, like Bill said, it's still kind of questions on what's going to happen from those companies that are providing VDI to work users within China coming out, and vice versa. Is that going to play a game changer in the near future because of this? I don't know yet.
Yeah. We've got some experience trying to do Citrix over there, and it's really worked out pretty well, mainly because of the speed and robustness of the protocol. But it was definitely a challenge to get set up.
Oh yeah. It's definitely more secure Azure region than any other one that's out there because it's so isolated.
So this next one talks about the getting started guide or getting started feature for Azure Virtual Desktop. Either one of you guys played with this? I
have not.
I haven't either. But what it looks like is that they've given some FX logic integration into it as well, moving forward.
We've talked about this one several times, Bill. The Start VM on Connect seems like something that you would have thought would have been in there a long time ago, but obviously good to have it now.
Yeah, they released that I think in a tech preview or something, an early release a couple of months ago, and I think what they're doing now is just making it a GA. This is all about helping you reduce costs and by deallocating machines when they're not in use and letting them spin up when the user connects. They just have to wait a little bit longer. But rather than having the machine run 24/7 and burn up all that compute, this way you can turn it off and deallocate it, and all you're paying for is storage.
Yeah. John, is this a feature that something like CloudJumper had already?
Yeah, CloudJumper, when you think about it, it's really just leveraging what was already there, but just scripting it all for you. So that functionality was there. Just being able to do all those scripts now, it's just broken down. It looks like more into a administrator user friendly interface to be able to handle it. But it looks like it's not supported within Classic. So it's not going to be a feature that's offered on the Azure Classic side.
So the next section talks about remote app streaming. This is one of my pet peeves because technically app presentation is not app streaming. But in the case of Azure Virtual Desktop, that's what they mean by app streaming, right? They mean presenting seamless apps.
I believe that's what they mean. Yes.
Yes.
So who do I need to talk to Microsoft to fix this? I'm going to fix it. If you've been around like we have, you know what app streaming really is, which is some type of app real-time deployment in a vacuum or in a bubble that either is resident or not resident versus app presentation, which is what we've been doing since the late 90s. But is this just really talking about getting that kind of documented and better user guides together?
Yeah, it's really breaking it down more into more, like you just said, the easier user guides and documentation on the deployments.
Have either one of you guys been involved in a deployment of native app streaming versus Azure Virtual Desktop?
When we did the WVD or AVD deployments that we've done thus far, have all, none of them have involved the MSIX app attach, which I think is the core of this. I believe that's the core of this remote app streaming, which is where you basically are building an app package that then can be attached or quickly delivered or deployed to a virtual desktop And I think what they're allowing you to do is publish those MSIX app attach apps seamlessly through a WVD or AVD instance. So to answer your question, because MSIX is relatively new, I haven't been involved in any that have leveraged that technology yet, but I think that's the core foundation of what this remote app streaming is all about.
Do you think the MSIX is a requirement of it, or can you actually install apps in an image like we have for bunches of years?
So you can always do that, but I think MSIX as an app is a requirement for remote app streaming, but I could be wrong. Again, I haven't looked into it at a deep level anyways.
Yeah. I just think you hear so many people talking about, Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows Virtual Desktop, that this has kind of been not very much talked about, and maybe rightfully so. We've come and gone from the years of app virtualization. However, we are seeing a resurgence in it with these concepts of, workspaces that kind of take the place of the desktop, and then the app is nothing but an object within that workspace.
Exactly.
And then finally, this last section here talks about Azure Virtual Desktop Handbook. I know nothing about this thing. I'm sitting here just envisioning sitting down to read some of it and running out of time much quicker than I would have time to read it.
Yeah, really what we're getting is the handbooks that are now deployed out for Citrix, disaster recovery, VMware, Horizon. So it's just giving us better design and updated handbooks on deployments and configurations within Azure and AVD.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of jealous of consultants these days that get to go out and read this stuff and have it so readily available. Don't feel like we had that type of access. We were buying books.
That's right.
It was very dated. Get the book right when it comes out, because a month later it was sometimes useless.
But it also helps when you have automation today to be able to do the things quicker when we had to deploy it out by hand and test it all out first, and then eventually wait for a book to come out.
Yeah. So I'm taking a quick glance at the June announcements, and I guess other than this last one, single sign-on for Active Directory federated services, either one of you guys aware of that feature that was announced in June?
I think we might have covered that on a prior podcast, maybe not, but I do remember that when this came out, and this is really all about allowing the customer to deliver a single sign-on experience. It's pretty involved to set up, from what I could tell, natively, but it would give the user, how if you've done AVD, just built it, from the portal. When you log into the website, the RD web client, which is kind of akin to our storefront, you log into that, you enter your credentials, you get the icons, you click on the app icon or the desktop icon, it launches the desktop, then it asks you to enter your Windows credentials. So you're effectively entering them twice if you've logged in for the first time. I think this mitigates that or eliminates that by leveraging ADFS to give you a single sign-on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about this is the fact that you can now leverage the federation with the AD and get that single sign-on. It's huge. There was so many deployments years ago when we first started with Citrix Cloud where ADFS wasn't even supported. Then we had to go into that, and now we've got that support with single sign-on. That's really a big deal.
So guys, I want to use the last, I want to use like 10 minutes here to talk about Windows 365, which was recently announced. John, you want to take a stab at explaining what Windows 365 is?
Windows 365? No, actually I don't, because I didn't see this, read through this one.
That's all right. Bill, you want to do it, or you want me to just kind of jump in and do it?
Well, you're welcome to, but I mean, basically that Microsoft's calling it a new category, and it's basically where you go into a website and buy a desktop or a group of desktops, spin them up via a web browser or a local client. It's kind of like WVD, but not with all the back-end infrastructure that you have to set up. It's just ready there, and you buy prepackaged offerings. and pay for them by user by month.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's fallen with under its virtual machine category versus the virtual desktop.
Well, it's really desktop as a service that
Yeah.
includes the brokering as well as the ability to self-subscribe and custom, configure and monitor and manage your own virtual machine, your own virtual Windows client OS in Azure. They're trying to put us out of business, John.
Yeah.
No, I got you. We don't have to worry until the third iteration. That's when Microsoft gets it.
Yeah. No, I think what I would highlight for people is it's still going to require, systems admins. This is just like going to the store and buying your own hardware or buying your own memory later and upgrading it. I think it's a good thing. I just think it's confusing for people as to what this thing really is.
Yeah.
So
the way I see it is this is a direct shot over the bow, if you will, towards Amazon Workspaces, if that's what it's called now.
Or even Citrix Desktop as a service.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, and I'm just taking a look at that second paragraph there. So they're talking about deploying the virtual endpoints with endpoint management, but no additional VDI enterprise resources or anything along those lines. So it does sound like it's more of a VM lease versus an actual VDI type solution, even though they're offering an OS or whatever version it is, whether it's a desktop or server. It does seem like it's more of a, it goes back to a conversation we've had offline, Andy, about, SLAs and how SLAs are met. On the Azure side of the house, there are different SLA requirements from a VM delivery and a VDI delivery. So it is two different categories as far as Azure is concerned.
I kind of look at this as pooled, non-persistent. You have persistent, and then this one is mine. Like this is my VDI, either through my company subscription or through my personal subscription. And this is my virtual desktop. I got nobody to help me. It's all mine. It's up to me to manage it. My virtual desktop. And maybe that's part of a company that buys a bunch of those simultaneously or subscribes to them, or even individuals that might, I don't know if you can do it at one at a time, but you could literally go and subscribe and you could give it memory, take away memory, add graphics cards, take away graphics cards. It's kind of like the old days we were installing hardware into your computer.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I do. I don't know what it really means yet as far as a true enterprise VDI solution is concerned.
Well, and John, when you said enterprise, did you mean true enterprise companies or, that company with 10 users and they need the desktop for them?
True enterprise, follow the sun type organization, getting it out there outside of maybe smaller department units utilizing it within them. I do see this as where Microsoft is we're giving you a solution. We're going to take you there, but you need to take it the rest of the way for what you need.
Right.
It's
That's kind of where I see it. Go ahead, Bill.
That's all right. Kind of interesting to note that when they released this, announced this rather, and they had evals available for people to sign up for, that within, I think it was 2 days, they ran out of evals. They had to shut them off, turn them off. They had so many. So there's clearly some sort of demand. A lot of that was probably tire kicking from IT folks like us. But it was still, they basically, whatever they'd allocated for it in Azure, they burned it up pretty quick.
Yeah. I think this is real. I think there's a need for this. I expect to see companies looking to do this. They're still going to need, consultants like us to help with the tweaking and the management of these things. But they're going to be able to buy these things like they buy, desktop computers today or laptop computers today and deploy them without a lot of effort.
Yeah, I think you're going to see thin client manufacturers and other folks that make endpoints that they're going to be enabling them to plug into this, just like they did with AVD and Citrix.
So does the Windows 365, how does the licensing and pricing fall down? Is that included with EAs, or is this something that we're going to be seeing as a standalone service?
So what I don't know yet, but what I'm expecting to see is there comes a day when there's O365, M365, and then there's M365 plus or whatever it is. And
Well, I'm sorry, Andy, if you go out to the ordering page and you try to sign up for one,
yeah,
it basically tells you whether or not you qualify for. You have to select: do I qualify for a hybrid benefit, or am I going to, or not? And if you don't, it's more. It costs more.
Gotcha.
Per user per month.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've already got the license, you obviously get a cheaper price per user per month. If you don't have the license, then they're bundling it in. It looks like, anyways.
So you're saying if you're an M365 user already, then you're just paying for the hardware. If you're not, then you're paying for the OS license and the hardware, or virtual.
What it looks like is when you go to buy now on the main page, it says, will each cloud PC user be running Windows 10 on their primary work device? If so, you qualify for hybrid benefits. Otherwise, the cost is higher per user.
And what if I don't already have an Azure tenant?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like they have a business plans as well as an enterprise.
Yeah.
So I guess if you didn't have one, that would be something that you would have to stand up with it.
I think the business plan is 300 users or less, and enterprise is anything above that.
Yeah.
It's either 250 or 300. I forget which.
Well, so I like the application. I haven't had a chance to price it. I don't know, is the price through the roof or not?
Pricing doesn't look that bad from a business standpoint.
Yep.
Oh, well, from the enterprise as well.
It'll be interesting to see where it goes and who the adopters are.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, that is all we have time for today. John and I have another, or I think all three of us, or at least John and I do have another podcast here in a few minutes. We're going to go to about 7:00 Eastern tonight. My wife doesn't know yet. I need to call and tell her. But appreciate you guys joining, and hopefully this has been helpful for folks.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks.
Have a good night.